So let's talk about proteins and nucleic acids. Proteins, or as it looks like I'm screaming proteins at you. So the thing about proteins is that they are the most structurally and functionally diverse group, meaning that proteins have a wide array of shapes and functions. So they can be enzymes, they can help to give living things structure, like with the collagen. They can be carriers and assist in transport, like we saw in the cell membrane. They can have transport proteins that help other molecules get across the cell membrane. Hemoglobin is a protein in your blood that helps carry iron. We also saw when we worked on the cell membrane, the proteins that are kind of coming off the cell membrane that can help in signaling and communication. They can be antibodies. They can help with movement, and they also can help with storage, okay? So, for example, seeds are encased in proteins to help store that seed, store that genetic information when they're in their dormant phase. So, here we go. What do I want you to know? So a monomer is an amino acid, and you guys saw this when you guys created your models. Glycine was your monomer. That was one amino acid. A polymer is called a polypeptide, and that's just a bunch of amino acids built together. If you look at the different shapes. So they are very large molecules. When we made our models in class, and those of you that haven't, you'll do it probably later this week. We did a tiny little section. We did not even scratch the surface of how big these molecules are. Also, though, when we ingest them, it takes our bodies longer to break down. So that's why protein is such a good food source, because we put a lot of energy into breaking it down, and it can give us sustained energy as opposed to like cramming a donut in your face. That just kind of gives you a quick burst of energy and then makes maybe you feel bad about yourself. You also saw up in that right-hand corner, when you combine the glycine and the serine, a water molecule came up. So when they bind together, a water molecule is released. Oops, there we go. There's your amino acids. So what's in an amino acid? You've got your carbon in the center. You've got your acid, which is the red part. It's just another little carbon group. And you've got your R group, which is whatever it's going to be. It can be a number of things. And then you have your amino acid group, which is signified by a nitrogen. Don't worry too much about this. Just when it comes to the structure, know that the structure of the proteins dictate its shape, and know there is a variety of different structures, okay? For example, with glucose or with sugars and carbs and lipids, there's a main structure, and then they kind of build off each other, with a couple of exceptions. But with proteins, it can be, it can be very difficult at times to look at two molecules and say, okay, well, see the similarities and to see that they're proteins. So you got your peptide bond. All that means is that you have that release of water. So when I say dehydration synthesis, what I mean is you've got that release of water, and then like you guys saw, you've got your carbon and your nitrogen. That's that peptide bond right there. That's basically it. So just know that the carbons are going to bond with the nitrogens when creating proteins, and that water is going to be released. Oh, this is all messed up. Okay, so again, the protein structure dictates what it can do. So if you look, you've got your hemoglobin, that's that one structure. Pepsin, which is in our stomach acids, that's another structure. Collagen, which is in like our skin and our hair and our nails, kind of help to give us protection, a totally different structure. So nucleic acids, we're not going to spend a lot of time on nucleic acids because we're going to cover those when we talk about DNA, but they are technically a macromolecule. Nucleic acid's job is to store our information, in particular, our information that makes us us. And now nucleic acids and proteins are connected in a way because nucleic acids are responsible for the creation of proteins. They kind of are the code, the blueprint that tells the cell what proteins to make. And those proteins make us us. What do? They store, they're the blueprint, right? They also can transfer information. If you want to, they help to in cell division, right? You have that DNA going from cell to cell when a cell splits. And that it not only does it store the information, but it also makes sure that information is transferred to the next cell. In hopes, of course, our main job here, right, is to kind of keep our DNA going. So our cells want to preserve our DNA so that we can go be fruitful and multiply, I guess, and produce. But not now. Don't reproduce now. Wait 20, guys get 20, 30 years. So nucleic acids are going to be two forms for the most part, DNAs and RNAs. The DNA is double helix, right? So there's two different backbones. RNA is one strand. DNA is two strands, RNA is one strand. Single helix, double helix, a monomer is what's called a nucleotide. So our monomers for proteins were the amino acids. And for the nucleic acids, a monomer, a single molecule is called a nucleotide. And that's kind of what they look like. You got that phosphate group, you got a sugar, and you got a nitrogen. Those three things make up your nucleic acid. And what's always good to remember is that if I ever ask you to identify any of these based on their structure, always look at the phosphate group, PO4. So there's a phosphate and 4 oxygens. Make sure there's a sugar, which is that ring, and then your nitrogen base. And that's basically all I need you guys to know for nucleotides. Proteins, if you guys, I would write down a couple questions on proteins because we'll try to answer those in class. And because those are the ones that I really want you to focus on for now. All right, guys, thank you for listening.